In Korea, loving is almost a crime. Between million-dollar contracts, possessive fans, and a media that transforms any affection into a spectacle, many celebrity couples simply don't resist. Behind the fairy tale scripts, there are stories suffocated by fame, loves that died under the weight of public opinion. Today, you're going to learn about the 5 Korean actor couples who broke up because of pressure from the entire world. Some loves are born too illuminated to survive in peace. Hyunbin and Song Hye-kyo's began behind the scenes of the world that they live in, a drama about 2 actors struggling to reconcile public life and affection. While they played a couple in fiction, they discovered the chemistry was real. What began as a professional friendship transformed into a sincere relationship, but from the beginning they knew they wouldn't have the right to anonymity. In Korea, the love of 2 stars is a national spectacle. When the press discovered the relationship, magazines began photographing them as if they were characters from a fairy tale. The public wanted details, fantasized about a wedding, demanded coordinated smiles. Each outing together was analyzed, each glance became a story. Hyunbin grew as a symbol of charisma and seriousness, but Song Hye-kyo suffered with the pressure that the industry reserves for women. They called her ambitious, cold, distant. The same country that romanticized their story seemed to want to destroy it. Over time, the routine became unbearable. The filming, interviews, and constant surveillance made them seem like 2 prisoners. They couldn't walk hand in hand without a flash exploding. They couldn't be apart for a day without the media announcing a crisis. Intimacy disappeared. When Hyunbin needed to prepare for mandatory military service, the geographic distance was the final straw. At the beginning of 2011, the romance came to an end. Neither blamed the other, but they knew it was no longer possible to live under so much pressure. Even separated, they continued to be remembered as one of the most iconic couples on Korean television. Hyunbin rebuilt his life and is now married to Sun Ye-jin, another set partner, while Hye-kyo remains a symbol of elegance and resilience. What they experienced wasn't failure, it was consequence. In Korea, the culture of idolatry transforms artists into public property. When the public begins to demand participation in their idols' love lives, no relationship resists for long. The romance of Hyunbin and Song Hye-kyo was beautiful, mature, and deep, but it was also a portrait of the fragility of those who try to love under lenses and microphones. They were 2 people who truly liked each other, but were prevented from living this feeling in peace. In the end, there were no villains, only the certainty that, in the Korean industry, the light that illuminates also burns. And it was in this light that one of the country's most remembered romances ended up disappearing. When the relationship between Dong-wook and Suzy was revealed in mid-2018, Korea seemed to hold its breath. He was over 30 with a consolidated career, marked by intense roles and a reputation as a reserved and mature man. She, barely over 20, was seen as the nation's girlfriend, a symbol of youth and purity. The 13-year age difference immediately transformed into ammunition for public opinion. What could have been just a meeting between 2 souls at different stages of life became a battle of perceptions, judgments, and assumptions. In the first days, headlines talked about Suzy's audacity and Lee Dong-wook's responsibility. Online comments questioned whether he wasn't too old for her, while others criticized him for taking advantage of a younger girl's naivety. In Korea, where image is a religion, a relationship like this challenged the invisible norms of how a star should love. Society, which pretends to be modern, is still deeply conservative when the subject is romance. Suzy, who had already faced criticism after breaking up with Lee Min-ho, was attacked again as if she didn't have the right to fall in love again. The 2 tried to maintain balance. They met in discreet cafes, dined away from flashes, tried to cultivate something simple. But the press gave no respite. Paparazzi followed them, portals reported every detail, and fans speculated about intentions. The age difference was mentioned in every headline, as if it were the main plot. Social networks became a tribunal. There were those who said she was seeking stability, and those who claimed he was trying to appear younger. Between these extremes, what was true was lost. The relationship lasted a few months, and the end was announced cordially. They decided to continue as good colleagues, but one only had to read between the lines to understand. They were exhausted. The pressure was inhuman, and the age difference used by the media as fuel created an abyss of expectations. Lee Dong-wook was constantly charged with acting as a protector, while Suzy was portrayed as too immature for him. No love survives so many voices opining about what it should be. The breakup, far from being a fight or disagreement, was a form of defense. It was impossible to sustain something that the entire country insisted on interpreting. The society that pretends to support love between celebrities is the same one that destroys it with moral judgments. And in their case, the age difference became a symbol of a social inequality disguised as curiosity. Today, both have moved forward, with solid careers and more protected private lives. But the story of Lee Dong-wook and Suzy remains as a bitter reminder that, in Korea, even love needs to fit into standards of appearance and age. When it doesn't fit them, it's expelled, not by the end of feeling, but by the cruelty of a public that confuses morality with control. Some relationships don't even get to flourish because they're uprooted before they even exist. Jae-wook and Karina's from the group aespa was one of those cases. When the news came out in February 2024, the entire country stopped. He was the actor of the moment, praised for his intense performance in Alchemy of Souls, and considered the new heartthrob of dramas. She, one of Korea's most beloved idols, representative of a new generation that mixes talent, beauty, and discipline. Their meeting seemed like a fairy tale, until the public decided to transform it into tragedy. The relationship was recent, but the simple fact of existing together was enough for social networks to become a battlefield. Outraged fans began attacking Karina, saying she betrayed the fans' love and put the group's image at risk. The singer, accustomed to dealing with pressure, found herself forced to apologize publicly, one of the saddest scenes in Korean pop culture. She wrote a handwritten letter saying she had reflected deeply and that she disappointed important people, all this for having started a relationship. Meanwhile, Lee Jae-wook tried to remain silent. He knew any word would be distorted and chose not to fuel the spectacle. Even so, he was dragged into the chaos. Entertainment programs began questioning whether he had acted responsibly, and opinion columns described him as imprudent. In a few days, a relationship that could have been light and discreet became a national scandal. And when the scandal becomes bigger than the feeling, love doesn't survive. The breakup came quickly, announced in a formal note that said they decided to remain as colleagues and focus on their work. A cold phrase to end something that never had time to evolve. Behind it were fear, sadness, and a cruel lesson. In the Korean industry, artists don't belong to themselves, but to public opinion. Loving is a contract infraction harshly punished. The case of Lee Jae-wook and Karina exposed the abyss between image and reality. Fans say they want their idol's happiness, but only accept this happiness if it fits their fantasies. The culture of idolatry creates unilateral bonds that don't admit rivals, and the price of breaking this illusion is high. They didn't break up due to incompatibility, jealousy, or distance. They broke up because the public didn't allow them to continue. Joo-hyuk and Lee Sung-kyung were the perfect couple in the public's eyes. Young, talented, and beautiful. The two met as agency colleagues at YG Entertainment, and already had an old friendship before acting together in weightlifting fairy Kim Bok-ju, the drama that would seal their fate. The on-screen chemistry was so natural that fans openly rooted for a romance. And when in 2017 the relationship was confirmed, it seemed fiction had become reality. Korea melted for a brief moment. But the same public that applauded the couple was the first to judge. The exposure was immediate. They were no longer just two young people in love. They were a media product. Any gesture, clothing, or absence became a national subject. Packed schedules, international trips, and new work proposals made simple meetings difficult. Joo-hyuk was on the rise, establishing himself as a protagonist, and Lee Sung-kyung was sought after by major productions. The distance, amplified by filming routines and the need to keep up appearances, began to create invisible fissures. The press, always hungry, began speculating about problems. Magazines said he was too distracted, while other portals suggested she didn't accept the pace of his career. Neither confirmed anything, but public rumor had already done the damage. Within a few months, the couple announced the end. The statement was direct. They returned to the relationship of close colleagues. Korea received the news with indifference, as if the breakup were inevitable, almost predictable. The truth is that the pressure of being a perfect couple ended up suffocating what was most human between them. The love that was born from a real partnership was corroded by the need to maintain a constant image. The public demanded maturity, presence, and romanticism, but denied space for mistakes and pauses. In a country where a relationship's duration is measured by online engagement, theirs lasted longer than many expected, but less than they deserved. Today, Joo-hyuk continues as one of the most admired actors of the new generation, and Lee Sung-kyung remains one of Korea's most charismatic actresses. Both rarely speak about the relationship, perhaps out of respect for what they lived and also out of exhaustion. Sometimes, the greatest proof of affection is letting go before the world destroys what little remains. The case of Seo Ye-ji and Kim Jung-hyun is perhaps the most turbulent of all. They met in mid-2018, when Jung-hyun was still seeking stability in his career, and Ye-ji was seen as one of Korea's most promising and enigmatic actresses. The relationship began discreetly, but quickly transformed into a story of control, jealousy, and power, amplified and distorted by the media. When the scandal broke, Years later, Korea watched the public collapse of a couple that no longer existed. In 2021, Kim Jung-hyun was accused of inappropriate behavior behind the scenes of the drama Time. He allegedly treated the main actress with coldness and requested script changes to avoid romantic scenes. The case generated indignation until leaked messages revealed something shocking. Supposedly, Seo Ye-ji instructed him to act this way, forbidding him from having physical contact with other actresses and asking him to keep his distance from cast colleagues. The messages were never officially confirmed, but were enough to destroy both their images. Korea, which loves a villain, chose Ye-ji as the target. She was accused of manipulation, psychological abuse, and even emotional witchcraft. Advertisers broke contracts, films were postponed, and her name disappeared from television. Jung-hyun, in turn, was portrayed as a victim, a man under toxic influence. Within days, a private relationship became a national tribunal. Behind the scenes, close friends stated that the romance had ended long before the controversy, but the press didn't want to know. What mattered was the spectacle. Seo Ye-ji remained secluded in silence for almost a year before trying to return to television with the drama Eve, while Jung-hyun struggled to rebuild his reputation. The case left a deep scar. It showed how implacable Korea is with its women, especially when they challenge the ideal behavior the public expects. More than a love scandal, their story is a mirror of Korean entertainment's cruelty. A failed relationship became ammunition for collective hatred, and the consequences went beyond professional life. Seo Ye-ji and Kim Jung-hyun were punished not only for their mistakes, but for having lived in a culture that transforms intimacy into spectacle and forgiveness into weakness. The love that once existed was lost amid accusations, headlines, and silence. And in the end, only the memory remained of two artists swallowed by their own fame, and by a public that seems to feed on their idol's collapse.